Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. And here, by popular demand, a couple of you suggested we do a little video on the 5 most unfairly neglected orchestral masterpieces. And I mean large orchestral masterpieces, because overtures and littler pieces like that, oh, there's so many. I mean, we've totally bifurcated our concert life in the worst possible way. You've got pops concerts, which are doing more and more less. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Which are doing less and less classical music. That is, overtures and little suites and all the pop stuff. They're doing more modern things like, film scores, which is wonderful, by the way. I love them doing that stuff. But, there's so much repertoire. And I guess at the end of the day, they have to decide what niche of the repertoire they're going to be exploiting and what they think will appeal to audiences. I mean, when was the last time you saw anybody do a soupe overture? I mean, it's ridiculous. They're fabulous pieces. So anyway, little pieces are a separate category. So we're talking about big works, symphonic works, works of large scale, concertos, things like that. And I have 5. These are divided between pieces which have dropped out of the repertoire, which I think is just a shame, and pieces which deserve to be in the repertoire, having a twilight existence on the margins, thanks to recordings and occasional recordings of, local interest. So here they are, the big 5. And I'm sure many of you will have your big 5. Most unfairly neglected large orchestral masterpieces. And masterpieces they are. Great works, all of them. First, Dandy, the Symphony on a French Mountain Air. It took me so long to figure out that air didn't mean like air. It meant aria. It meant melody or tune. But the title came in back in the days when it was popular, at the dawn of the 20th century, when you could call something an air. When what's her name, the soprano, demanded that Handel give her a fresh air, and so he hung her out a window. That's an air. Yeah. Anyway, the tune is lovely. It's a French folk tune, and it's a wonderful work. It's actually a piano concerto, but it's been sidelined because it's not called a piano concerto. It's called a symphony. And as a result of that, you can't get people to play it. It's extremely difficult for the pianist. It requires a lot of chops. I've talked about this before. And it's really very, very interesting how, people sort of poo-poo it because it's neither a symphony nor a concerto. It's a symphony concertante is what it is. And it's a splendid one, in 3 fun movements, full of juicy tunes with a really funny ending. It's so much less chromatically sludgy than most of Dandy's music, probably because the tune itself is a lovely little diatonic, mountain folk thingy. And it's charming. It never should have fallen out of the repertoire. But, orchestras have to be willing to play it, and pianists have to be willing to learn it. I'm actually shocked that it didn't show up in Hyperion's Romantic Piano Concerto series, because it really belonged there. I mean, there have been some modern recordings, a few of them, but boy, go find the thing in concert. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So there you go. What can I say? Next, Ernesto Halffter's Sinfonietta. This is one of the great neoclassical masterpieces. Hands down. Now, Halffter is one of those typical Spanish composers. He spent most of his life trying to finish Falla's Atlántida, which took him like 50 years, and he wrote like 6 pieces of music otherwise that he died. So, and there are lots of Halfters. He spawned a whole family of Halfters, and, who are all composers. But this is Ernesto from the first half of the 20th century. And he wrote a couple pieces that are well known, the Portuguese Rhapsody for piano and orchestra, and this thing. Now, this thing is really a concerto grosso. It has solo everything, winds and strings, and 2 dueling snare drums from opposite sides of the orchestra of different timbre. And it is one of the most tuneful, delightful, charming works. And it's big. It's in 4 big movements. it's not something that you can simply dismiss. I mean, it is a great, great, great piece of music. And because Halffter wrote so little, he doesn't have much of a reputation. But my God, this is fantastic. And if you haven't heard it, listen to it. You can find it, by the way, if you have the Ataulfo Argenta box, which I have to be talking about shortly. I'm still working my way through some of the mono stuff, which is lots of fun. But, yeah, and it's also Enrique Jorda. It's both. So anyway, yes, the Halffter Sinfonietta is in there, a famous, famous recording of it, really the reference recording of it. But there have been a bunch of others, so give it a shot, for heaven's sake. Don't delay a second. You're going to love it. It's on CPO. It's on a bunch of other labels. Okay, so there's that. Then, here's a piece that will maybe strike you as surprising. Edward MacDowell's Second Piano Concerto. Now, MacDowell, I always was fascinated by the fact that, I've mentioned this too before, that when you go to concert halls, they have the names of the great composers, and they always have Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Handel, and usually Gluck gets up there too for some reason, and he was another one that we never heard much of, but he was up there. And MacDowell, because he was the only American composer anybody cared about in the first half, the first decades, the first half of the 20th century, the end of the 19th century. He was supposed to be the future of American music. He was not hardly, and he was famously dismissive of Dvorak's claim that American composers should look into Negro melodies. He said, I have no idea what those have anything to do with American music, typically. But be that as it may, whatever aesthetic stance he took, he was a follower of Liszt, and he wrote tone poems, and not a lot of music. He died fairly young. But his Second Piano Concerto is a fine romantic piano concerto. Absolutely marvelous. It's sort of loosely based on Saint-Saëns' Second Piano Concerto as well. It has a similar structure with that central scherzo thing and whatnot. But it's a good work. It's brilliantly written for the soloist. It sounds terrific. It's not too long. It has no dead spots. It has great tunes, and it really ought to be played. I mean, you don't have to believe that MacDowell is the great American composer to acknowledge that he wrote some really first-class music. And the Second Piano Concerto is probably his masterpiece, and it really ought to be performed. And it ought to be performed by American pianists out of patriotic duty. I mean, one of the reasons we hear a lot of these... Wait a minute, we're about to have a cat moment. Hang in there. See? Are you going to get up there without turning this whole thing off and making a mess? Let's see if we can get her to her... Come on, gently. It didn't work, but that's okay. Now she's in her spot. There. Are you happy? Yes. So anyway, yeah, MacDowell ought to be performed. And what I was saying was, one of the reasons Elgar and Vaughan Williams and some of these other composers get to be known is because they at least have some local championship, some local base of operations that keeps them in the public eye. American composers almost never had that, not in a way that's been meaningful and that really promotes them. And it's a shame. It's really a shame. So, yeah, MacDowell's Second Piano Concerto is definitely one of those. Roussel, Symphony No. 2. Roussel's Second Symphony is one of the great 20th century symphonies by any standard, and it's certainly one of the greatest French symphonies ever written after, like, the Franck. It's just a fabulous work. It ends quietly. It has a high level of dissonance. It's very austere. It's austere. It's French. It's got lovely orchestration and some beautiful tunes, but it's a dark work, and it really, really powerful. And it's crazy that it doesn't get more attention, but I can understand why. It's not an easy piece. It really isn't. It takes serious concentration, but that definitely ought to be in the general repertoire. I mean, we listen to all kinds of difficult music because we understand how great it is, and this is one of those works. And finally, last but not least, Ernest Bloch's Concerto Symphonique, which I've been pushing for years. You know, I was so disappointed that Biss, which was doing all of the Bloch orchestral music, which is fabulous. He was an amazing composer of all kinds of orchestral music. Yes. That they never got around to the Concerto Symphonique. It's only had a handful of performances, and none of them are completely satisfactory. And it's a masterpiece. It's fantastic. I mean, I've been talking a lot about his viola suite lately because that's also kind of sui generis, and it's got a lot of good recordings. Well, this has a lot of lousy recordings. I mean, the best bet for a good recording was Jenny Lind's on Hensler, but it was let down by a conductor who decided to take the finale at a slog of a tempo, which was really unfortunate. But it is fantastic. It's a big Frankian symphony with piano obbligato, like the Symphony on a French Mountain Air, actually. It's in cyclical form. It has 3 movements. There's no real slow movement. The central movement's a scherzo. The outer movements are big and have slower episodes. The tunes are fantastic. Da 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 dum bum 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 da 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 da. Oh, it's just great. It gets it catchy. It gets into your head. Bum ba da 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 da. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it deserves to be performed constantly. So those are my 5. I'm very interested to hear your 5. These can be works which should be in the repertoire, but only exist on the fringes, but in enough recordings so that we know how great they are, and or works that fell out of the repertoire and deserve to return. I think that's what you should be thinking about. Up to 5, doesn't have to be that many, and let's see what your opinion is. Thanks for joining me. Take care.